Okay, we've returned. I have two conversationalists on the line, or two delivers of important messages. Mercedes Kirkle and I was going to say Mother Mary, but Mary Magdalene, who comes through Mercedes with messages for the times. Two books have already been written, and another one is in process. And maybe Mary, we would talk a little more about some of the things that you've already delivered that are in the books that are related to action, exercise, the how-to. I think a lot of people may have heard what you're saying, and they know they need to get out of their mind and their mental, intellectual left hemisphere of the brain, as science talks about it, and more in balance with the right or the intuitive, which could be likened to masculine and feminine, or yin and yang, as in the Eastern traditions. And that you pointed out very importantly that this is within each of us. I have a male body, Mercedes has a female body, but we need to bring our masculine and feminine into balance. Maybe you talk about that, and also how to allow our emotions and our feelings to show up and not suppress them out of fear, or even the emotional pain that we experience because of wounds in the past, and that those emotions need to be mastered, as you say, rather than to run us and suppress everything that's going on under the surface or in the subconscious. So I'll relax after that and let you take it.
Many have gotten the message or have been taught that emotions, and specifically your painful emotions, are to be avoided, that if you have them, they're a sign that you are not spiritual, that if you're really spiritual, you won't have painful emotions, you won't be afraid, you won't be sad, you won't be angry. There is a level of truth to this. As you develop in your spiritual process, especially as you go into the higher frequencies of the fourth dimension, your experience of these painful emotions will be greatly diminished, or perhaps will not be your experience at all. But this will be a natural process. It will not be something that you're effortfully trying not to have painful emotions because you just don't enjoy them, or because you have the belief that it's not spiritual to have them. It will simply be a natural change that you will go through. At this level that most human beings are at, which includes still, for the most part, being physically based in the third dimension, your emotions are still very much a feature of your reality. And what many are doing is suppressing their emotions out of the idea that that will support them in their either practical life or their spiritual life. But in fact, this is not supporting most people at all. And it is based on a wrong understanding of emotions, and particularly the painful emotions. Painful emotions were given as an avenue of reconnecting with God when you have become disconnected. And the painful emotions are a communication device, much like physical pain is telling you that there's something you need to address in your body. And if all you ever do is suppress the physical pain or avoid the physical pain, it may be harmful to you. You may be not addressing something that needs taking care of in terms of your health and well-being at the physical level. It's the same way with emotions. The emotions are telling you that there's something at the core of your being that needs addressing. And the emotions are the voice for this something, the something that I have given the name of as your inner divinity, and specifically I call it your inner divine qualities. That everyone has this core part of themselves that is their connection to God. And when you have painful emotions, the emotion is alerting you that in one or more of your inner divine qualities, you've become disconnected from God. And not only does the painful emotion do that, but it actually shines a light on the pathway to find that inner divine quality that you've become disconnected from and to reconnect it. So it's actually giving you the avenue, the way. It's showing you the way to the healing that you require. Now, of course, this takes some understanding and some skill, and most people do not have that understanding and that skill. Most people never receive this. And so there's a learning involved in this, but it's not rocket science, as you might say. It's a very foundational learning that ideally all of you would have received as part of your growing up into adulthood, even from a very young age. But you were not raised by those who already embodied this and understood this themselves, and so what they passed on to you was what they knew. And what most of them passed on was the habit or the behavior of avoiding emotions.
Well, that's our patterning and conditioning too, isn't it? I mean, really, if you look at what would be social constructs or construct reality or what we believe, so much is related to the ego, persona, and belief systems, and that's not the feeling emotional body. And
no, it's not, and there's been very specific reasons for that at the social level, because when you let go of your emotions, you let go of your connection to your inner divinity, and what happens is you become disconnected from your power and you become disconnected from your life purpose. And when that happens, people are very easy to control. And so the authoritarian structures that exist in your world today and have for quite some time are benefited by this kind of disconnection.
Yeah.
And so there's been a societal reason for continuing and supporting this lack of wisdom and education relative to emotions.
Yeah. And I want to add too, because we may not get into it fully today, but we will in the future, at least talking with Mercedes, we have some intention set, and hopefully you're part of that this control and this manipulation of not only our wounds and emotions, but these good feelings, including the ecstasy of sexuality. I mean, what more could God have invented than an orgasm? Maybe there's a few other things you want to speak to, but that an orgasmic unified experience where you explode way past your ego. I mean, you can't let the ego dominate if you're in that sense of human in your in that sense of unity in your sexuality, and that's been controlled very, very carefully through religions and other philosophies. So human beings haven't experienced that incredible union, which is the divine. And maybe that's our closing conversation for today, and we'll talk more about that in the future.
And what is it you would like to me to address about this?
Well, just, explain the beauty of why that's so important to have the sexuality and the merging of two into one as a way of breaking the established paradigms of controlling ecstasy so that populations can be controlled, which is certainly not what we want to see. If somebody's broken out and had that ecstatic experience in a relationship, they want more of that. And if I may, in Sublime Union, which is subtitled A Woman's Sexual Odyssey, guided by Mary Magdalene, and that's Mercedes' book and your creation, Burl Hall is quoted as saying, "Why else do we make love if not to seek the original unity?" So your commentary on that and encouraging people to break out of the programmed box of mental gyrations.
Well, it is all part of breaking out of 3D altogether and moving into this higher dimension, which goes back to the original conversation of what Yeshua was teaching to the inner circle and what is now being opened up to everyone and given access to everyone. And there is a tug of war going between those who have orchestrated things in the third dimension seemingly to their benefit. Ultimately, it is not to anyone's benefit. No one benefits when someone is not given their full power and empowerment, their full access way to God and to their human divinity. But it is part of the experiment and the exploration that many souls have been engaging at the third dimension, for some to have this experience of bringing power to themselves at others' expense. And for that to happen, there was a great deal of control that was set into place. Control on many levels, and control on the ecstasy of sexuality was certainly one of those levels. But it was one of many that was part of a much greater whole. And yes, the ecstasy that you experience through sexuality can expand into something so much greater, and so can the ecstasy of your embodiment of your experience of reality moment to moment. And ultimately, it will not be different. You will not know the difference between this ecstasy of sexuality and the ecstasy of your ongoing experience.
Wow.
But that is something that will be grown into, that you are moving toward.
Sounds like fun. I mean, why not be in that space of joy and Satchitananda, bliss, all the words, even some of that the yogis spoke about in their deep meditations, as an ordinary, more ordinary reality. And we certainly appreciate your continuing to deliver the how-to, the way, the guidance, the exercises, along with Mercedes Kirkle, and we will stay tuned in the future. I'm sure we're going to talk more. And I thank you.
I thank you, and I thank all those who are moving towards this ecstasy and this bliss and following their heart. Thank you so much.